So I'm John McFarlane. I'm one of the co-founders of PlaceOS. Steve is the other co-founder. We're both here today. We started our career in audiovisual, and a lot of our traction at PlaceOS has been in smart buildings. But we now see these two things coming together. Audiovisual as the input to the AI that can trigger smart buildings and indeed trigger audiovisual experiences. So we're going to talk about the two different approaches to computer science basically. At the extreme high level, the way that most user interfaces work is by pointing and clicking. You get feedback from the computer and you give it more context, and this is back and forward until you get your result. The opposite is true for this declarative approach when it comes to the user experience we can enable with large language models. It's all about putting everything up front and you get the result instantly. It works out the context and you don't have to go back and forward. And this changes the way we can interact with technology. And we're going to just step through each of these as an example and then really make it tangible for audiovisual and how we can improve the audiovisual experience, particularly in meeting rooms and lecture theatres. We have room booking solutions and forms in some of our templated interfaces, and I would love to just get rid of all of them. That's our goal, is to have no interface to anything, just to have the technology react and respond automatically from logic-based automation that still has a role to play. So we're not replacing logic-based automation. It's the user experience when it comes to large language models can complement the user experience. So I'm dyslexic and have ADHD. I hate forms. I would never use them, which is why I love the approach we can take now, where we can just put all of our requests up front and remove the need for those forms and those buttons and those actions. But they're still there if and when you need them, but we can deliver those with more context. So it's all about thinking about the user experience, including large language models, but not replacing traditional user experiences and traditional logic-based actions and automation. So the reason we started PlaceOS was because of this exact problem. I used to work at the University of Sydney, and I was commissioning a lecture theatre in a brand new building, and saw there was a touch panel for every discipline of that building. There was a touch panel for blinds, a touch panel for air conditioning, and another touch panel for after hours air conditioning for some reason. There was blind control, there was outdoor shutter control. Literally each thing had its own touch panel, and then of course there was a audio-visual touch panel. So we went out to integrate all of this into one platform. It's essentially what we built at PlaceOS, and we quickly expanded out of the room into the building, and we do a lot of smart building projects around the world with that concept, like just everything connecting to one solution. But that touch panel problem essentially graduated into like too many apps. Now there's an app for everything. It's this exact same problem, just shifted to another area. And I think like if we have a button for every possible function that we're connected to, we'd end up having like a cockpit-like user interface. So this is one of the things I'm going to like really drill in on and show you some examples of how we're thinking about this, and to avoid this problem of having a different app with its own set of buttons, and one for visitor management, one for room booking, one for audiovisual, one for employee experiences, one for student experiences, one to book the accommodation on campus. There's a huge problem here of disconnect. And it starts at the integration level, but it also includes the user experience level. So these are the fundamental challenges we're trying to solve at PlaceOS with the appropriate technology. Logic sometimes user interface, so it still has a time and a place, including touch panels, including kiosks, they still have a time and a place. But how can we use large language models to improve and enhance that user experience? So this describe and done, we can start to think of what are the best ways we can implement this today. And I think it's anything that has a lot of touch points and back and forward. Because we did a lot of room booking, we started with that with room booking as our first integration with OpenAI and a chat-based experience. So this is something that's just in our interfaces now. So you can use a formal form to book catering, add extra stuff if you don't want to do it through a chat experience. But I honestly, this is the way I book rooms using our system, because I can just say what I need up front. I need a room that's pet friendly because my dog's coming in today. Here's the time it can be, and it just books it for me automatically. I don't have to fill in those web forms. Really simple, but we can start to build on top of this. And that's where we started to look at the room experience, but what else can we do? Then these touch panels, these physical user interfaces become discovery points for the AI. So we can still repurpose these touch panels that run user interfaces but it's not what you're touching and filling in forms with anymore. We can leverage the built-in microphones and cameras, and there's still a visualization element required. So that could be as simple as a dot that shows that it's listening to your commands, but then also the visual representation of the results that it's giving to you. So it can talk back to you, or it can give you text back to you, or it can give you results instantly on what available rooms are there, when's the next booking in this room. We still have these anchor points, these touch panels. I think touch panels actually have more of a role in our projects now than they have in the last 10 years because we can embed chat-based AI experiences onto them. And that's the exact demo we have. We launched at this show at the AOpen booth. If you want to see that, my colleague Steve can show you. But I want to think about extending that much further. So that's replacing what we've already been doing with graphical user interfaces with a more seamless experience of chat. But where can we take this where it can go way beyond just replacing one interface for the other? And that I'll give you the audio-visual example, and then we'll talk about how AV is also the input to computer vision, which is important on so many of our projects. So to give you this context, I actually just want to show you one of our open source modules. So PlaceOS is an open source integration platform. We have hundreds of integrations that are open source. You can go to the same link without logging in. It's just our GitHub repository. I'm looking at our Samsung module. So you can see all the functions that are defined up top here. There's like 30 or 40 functions within that Samsung module. But if someone was programming a user interface in the traditional sense, they would have to match a button for every possible function of that Samsung driver. So that's the old way of doing things. It's like, okay, you want your system to be able to turn on and off the Samsung TV, well, we'll match up to the power state. But the benefit of a large language model is that it can call these functions in situ, in real time, when it needs to, without a programmer having to hard code that functionality. So if you walk into a room, for example, and say, I can't see the image on the display, it can work out, well, maybe it's because the brightness is low. I can see that I have access to the brightness control through this module, so I'm going to go ahead and increase the brightness. It can then also look at the other things we're integrated with, like the blinds and the lights, and control those dynamically. So you don't have to hard code a user interface to each one of those functions. So this means in our projects where historically that has been the case, we now have thousands of more functions available to the user experience that wasn't there because no one programmed it in their logic settings or in their user interface design. So you can see with our hundreds of integrations, each of those having 30 or 40 functions, we now have tens of thousands of available functions that the large language model can call up when needed without anyone having to hard code that. This sounds like something that's happening in the distant future, but this is exactly what we've programmed now with our LLM integration. It allows you to define what we're exposing, what module, what functions we're exposing to the LLM, and if it's available in the system, the LLM can trigger that action. And I was going to show a demo, but as I said, this is not my laptop, so I can't go with that. I haven't authenticated into an interface, but we can show some of that at the AOpen booth. Because this can run on standard hardware like an AOpen panel that runs Chrome, so this is all browser-based, and we have provided this in a way that's agnostic to the actual LLM. So we are this abstraction layer, as we are with all these integrations, so we're agnostic to all hardware, and when we build drivers and we make them open source, you can pick and choose the appropriate LLM, run it on your own infrastructure. So for example, if you're running Azure, you could use your own instance of OpenAI's connection and use OpenAI as the thing we're interfacing with. So this is extremely flexible for programmers to now just make sure that the APIs are available to the LLM. And this is not just audio-visual, this is how everything will be programmed in the future when it comes to user experience. If everything's API-based, so if I bring this back to sort of a tangible outcome, if you design your solutions with everything connected with open standard and open APIs, you have this future-proof ability. It doesn't matter if you're using PlaceOS or anybody else. You just choose systems that connect, have open APIs, well-documented APIs, and every one of those functions are available to your LLM user experiences, so you don't have to hard code things in future. Here's another API we have, for example. It drives all of our workplace experiences again, it's completely open. Anyone can look at this, where you can see how we get and make bookings, how we integrate with calendars and events and catering and visitors and everything else. All of this is now available to any of the AI to trigger those actions. So we don't even have to have a hard-coded workplace application. So everything is completely dynamic, completely fluid, and changes the way we think of user experience. So user experience designers really have to understand how to at least read API documentation so they know what's available to them. You don't have to be a programmer. API documentation can be useful for functional requirements and designing your solution. If I bring back this to the other area of AI as the blanket of this talk, so we're talking about LLMs until now. The other area of audiovisual is obviously computer vision. So there's many open source models, there's lots of things built on cameras. We're leveraging some open source technology and have our own models as well that we can run on any image, basically, any H.264 stream or collect that. The reason PlaceOS is interested in that is because we provide analytics on space usage, and we trigger actions based on that analytics. Historically, a lot of that analytics has been really simple based on counting people, but now we can add context. So how many people are in that space, how many people were in that space, and what actions can I trigger based on that? So a typical one for us is just counting occupancy and turning things on or off. So if there's no one in the space, turn the HVAC off and it saves on energy consumption. But now we can actually say, well, what are people doing in that space? Are they wearing jackets? Is maybe the comfort levels need to be adjusted? Are there plates that need cleaning because catering's delivered a service and haven't come back to clean it? Or indeed for security workflows, or just additional analytics. So it can be age, sex estimates. They're estimates because they're never exactly right. Sometimes I'm offended at the age guesses that I am. But these are good enough for many scenarios to trigger different actions. It could be different digital signage content they're showing. It could be different room settings, different desk settings. Even change the height of the desk based on someone's height. Anything that we can detect with these models that are trainable. We have over 100 objects that have been programmed or trained into this model. So it can be everything from abandoned bags left behind, car license plate recognition, which we have implemented for visitor management, so we can allocate parking automatically. And then because we're integrated into access control, we can trigger the boom gate. Then we have some wayfinding that can show you where the car park is. This extends where the user experience starts and ends. And it adds more context. So it's another thing to consider in solution design. Like we can do more than counting people. We don't just need sensors that tell us if someone's there or not. What would we want to do if we have more context? So it's always asking these what-if questions to then come back to the solution design, and understanding what is possible is how you determine what that solution design is, right? So I encourage everyone to sort of take a look at the AOpen booth where we can discuss a number of these things. We leverage the AOpen hardware because it runs standard Chrome OS. So it just is browser-based, and we love making everything browser-based because it's scalable and accessible. But we do have projects where our clients run native applications, which gets access to native features of those devices. But the camera can be anything really, as long as we're getting the feed out of it, and it can be edge-based, and so we can run the processing on an edge-based device, so we're not sending video streaming back to our servers. It's just the input trigger to the action that goes back to our server. So look, in summary, I think we can leverage so many components with audiovisual for AI, and that's everything from the user experience. If you expose all your modules, all your APIs to the LLM, it can take that declarative approach to user experience design. And then obviously the input to the system is cameras and microphones. So we can start to think, well, how do we design this that it can be listening in a way that's secure, private, but also flexible. So I can just ask questions, get results in any desired space at any time. So that's the lightning fast overview. Please come see a demo. Steve can show you some more, and we can talk about how we have actually implemented this and some of our large projects. We usually do this at extreme scales, so multinational deployments, campus-wide university deployments, but we can scale down with our SaaS products as well. Thank you.